Have you ever imagined how a simple idea can transform the lives of millions of people? How courage, creativity, and determination can take someone from anonymity to extraordinary success. In this video, you will understand the reasons behind various curiosities about Barbie, such as, what is the doll's real name? Who is Ken, after all? Or why does Barbie wear so much pink? This is the story of a girl who was born poor, who had to face prejudices, emotional traumas, and many financial difficulties. And how she used all these obstacles to her advantage, creating the world's most famous doll. Welcome to the Trail to Success channel, where stories of overcoming become inspiration for your personal and professional success. It's hard to find someone who wouldn't recognize a Barbie doll as soon as they see one. Now, do you know who was responsible for creating this best-selling doll in the world? Popularly known as the mother of Barbie, Ruth Moscow Handler is the person behind this toy that transcends generations. The story that gave rise to the world's most famous doll began many years before its invention. Ruth Moscow Handler, the penultimate of 10 siblings, was born in 1916 in Denver, Colorado, the daughter of Polish parents. At 6 months old, Ruth was sent to live with her older sister and her husband because her mother needed to devote herself entirely to taking care of her younger brother, who became seriously ill. Time passed, and Ruth ended up living with them until adolescence, which caused a terrible feeling of abandonment, making her feel that she needed to be useful to be loved. It was at her sister Sarah's market that she developed her enthusiasm for business. Once, she said in an interview, "I don't know what was driving me, but I needed to prove to myself from the day I was born." Ruth grew up in a family where the idea of women working outside the home was not uncommon. In Poland, where anti-Semitism fueled conditions of poverty, everyone needed to work to contribute to the household income. She attributed her family's entrepreneurial spirit, in part, to such circumstances. Despite her passion for entrepreneurship, Ruth also experienced personal challenges during this period. She had to face societal pressure for working as a saleswoman at her sister's store at a time when most women had only 5 acceptable jobs: nurse, teacher, secretary, clerk, wife, and mother. Despite feeling distressed by the unjust criticisms she received, Ruth did not allow herself to be limited by these barriers. She deeply believed she could achieve anything she desired. In 1932, at the age of 16, she fell in love with a boy named Izzy Elliott Handler, who would become her life and business partner. Elliott was the typical introverted artist, while Ruth was determined and shrewd for business. In 1938, 6 years later, the two married and moved from Denver to Los Angeles in search of the American dream. Once in California, her husband developed a hobby of making some furniture and household items for their home from 2 new plastic components. Seeing an opportunity, Ruth suggested he turn the manufacturing of furniture and utensils, which was just a hobby, into something professional. The couple then formed a successful partnership, with him creating the pieces and her selling the products. The garage business grew faster than they had imagined, and just when everything seemed to be going smoothly, the couple was surprised by some very unpleasant news. The U.S. was in the period of World War II, and then President Roosevelt announced that plastic trade would be restricted for military use. The Handlers had created a line of plastic photo frames and were in the middle of the manufacturing process to fulfill a large contract. Desperate with the news of the plastic use restriction, Ruth always knew they could go beyond those objects and household utensils. Before the invention of Barbie, Ruth's life was like a roller coaster of emotions, full of ups and downs. In the 1950s, while her daughter played with improvised dolls, carefully cut out from magazines, Ruth made an extraordinary discovery. While everyone else saw only pieces of paper, she saw something more. She realized that her daughter needed to use her imagination to create fantasy stories with those magazine cutouts. And there was a reason for that. The fact was that the dolls of that time only portrayed babies, limiting the roles that children could play in the game. They could only play mothers or housewives. And deep down, children were not content to pretend to play only with these 2 possibilities. After all, children's imagination knows no bounds. Ruth noticed that her daughter and her little friends liked to play at exploring different roles and professions, projecting their future adult lives. Driven by this realization, Ruth had a revolutionary idea. to create a toy character, in the form of an adult, capable of helping build children's fantasies. That's how the seed of an idea was born, which would transform the world of toys. But this idea was not immediately explored, as Ruth didn't quite know how to get it out of her head and put it into practice. Time passed, and in 1955, in another risky move, Ruth, who held the position of executive vice president of Mattel, made a bold bet. She invested $500,000, which was almost all of the company's capital at the time, and bought a year of advertising on a television program about to premiere, the Mickey Mouse Club. Seeing an opportunity that no one else saw, she became a pioneer in a new way of marketing products directly to children. The new Mickey series was a success, and the $500,000 investment paid off. Through commercials during the program, Mattel achieved good growth. In 1956, to take a break from the frantic pace of work in the U.S. and recover their energy, the handlers took a vacation and took their two teenage children, Barbara and Kenneth, on a trip to Europe. During a tour, Ruth and her daughter Barbara were stunned by a window display with a doll dressed in ski clothes. It was the German doll called Bild Lily, a doll with the features of a young and attractive woman, targeted at the adult audience. This doll was very different from the baby-shaped dolls that most American little girls had. It looked a lot like the idea Ruth had imagined a few years earlier, a child's doll with an adult woman's body and several outfits. With the idea bubbling in her mind, Ruth returned home determined to make it a reality. She began working on the development of a three-dimensional model of the doll and hired a talented designer named Jack Ryan to help with the task. Inspired by the doll with adult features that Ruth had seen during her vacation, Ryan adapted the idea to create a child version. And so, the embryo of the doll called Barbie was born. Here come two curiosities. The first is, did you know that the name Barbie is just the doll's nickname? That's right, her real name is Barbara Millicent Roberts, the same name as Ruth's daughter. The second curiosity is that the choice of this personal name was not by chance. It has a special and secret meaning for the creation of the world's most iconic doll, which we will reveal later. Continuing the story. Excited about the materialization of her idea, Ruth presented the doll prototype to Mattel executives. She hoped for support and enthusiasm but encountered resistance and skepticism within her company. The executives interpreted Ruth's idea as madness. They said that Barbie was an impossible whim, that the product would not be profitable, and that American mothers would not buy a sexualized doll for their daughters. In their view, Ruth was crazy because children only wanted dolls like the ones that already existed, in other words, dolls that represented babies or small children. But Ruth had an intuition inside her that said Barbie could be much more than just a doll. She believed that she could take the same successful strategy she had used in the past when she decided to buy the right to advertise Mattel products on television. Ruth decided to take a risk again and create ads showing Barbie in action, playing different roles, and stimulating children's imagination. The bet paid off once again, and the commercials were an immediate success. With children seeing Barbie as an opportunity to expand their fantasies, demand for the doll began to grow. However, as the Barbie phenomenon grew, it also faced criticism and controversies. Some argued that Barbie's appearance promoted an unrealistic beauty standard, affecting girls' self-image negatively. Her body measurements were nearly impossible to achieve in real life. These measurements could influence girls to strive for excessive weight loss, posing the risk of anorexia for those who tried to imitate the doll. Additionally, Barbie was also harshly criticized for her lack of diversity in terms of ethnicity, hair color, and body type. This led to accusations of lack of representation. In 1961, 2 years after Barbie's launch, Mattel introduced the Ken doll into the toy universe. The doll's name was chosen in honor of Ruth and Elliot's son Kenneth Sean Carson. But not everything was smooth in 1961. That same year, Mattel faced a legal dispute with Greiner and Hauser, the manufacturer of Lily, for infringing on a patent related to the doll's hip joint. The dispute was eventually settled out of court, and 3 years later, Mattel acquired the rights to Lily, which ceased production. Despite the challenges, Barbie continued to grow in popularity and became a global phenomenon. In 1960, 1 year after Barbie's launch, over 350,000 units were sold in more than 150 countries. As a result of the unquestionable success of the doll, Ruth Handler became a millionaire. She and her husband, Elliot, built an empire in the toy industry, and Mattel became one of the largest companies in the sector. The story of Ruth Handler and Barbie is evidence that entrepreneurship, creativity, and the courage to move forward can take us far. However, despite her resilience and self-confidence, Ruth could never have imagined the lasting impact that Barbie would have on the toy world and the imagination of children. Barbie delights children and adults worldwide, stimulating the imagination and creativity of new generations. Through her various careers and roles, Barbie continues to inspire girls and boys to dream big and believe in their potential. Her legacy lives on to this day, and the doll has become more than just a toy. She is a cultural icon and a source of inspiration for millions of people around the world. Ruth Handler's entrepreneurial spirit and boldness are an example for all who wish to achieve personal and professional success. The story of Barbie has ended, but there's still much to learn here. If you want to understand if there's something in common among stories of people who were poor and became millionaires after a successful product or service idea, we'll unravel the thoughts, habits, and attitudes that led these people out of poverty.